All right, Abusia, a year chairman Wontumi, yes, MPP Ashanti Regional Chairman, Abusia no akopie mu ewo a year court. Na Abusia we dear ma meka sanwa. Yen court na yetie ne court so ewo court. Abra chairman Wontumi just so ogina ne nan so 2 hours ewo a year court na just so omo e ka kire a year judge ne sanka application no omo de e baaye no. Judge no embo modi ya na onhwe sa application ni mu no. Abusia jensem na judge no e ka kire a year chairman Wontumi. Abusia yinteni na masese ha eda so aye be media je chebese waso beso so abedi ama notification bell no so for more podcast update yinteni komo no mu ye masese
ene chairman Wontumi ekokopie mu ewo court na ne court a okokopie no chairman Wontumi abusia ene so court no really against chairman Wontumi a eno ena ya project e de ato ye screen no enchen e de amam no chairman Wontumi's attempt to halt Samai Boy Galamsey trial dismissed. Court orders him to answer to charges. Abusia ene chairman Wontumi ekokopie mu ewo court na okokopie mu no ene odinsem bi etudwa ogina adaka mu for 2 hours on ne lawyers no senka judges no enhwe document na omo anase application na omo de buy no omo nhwem nanka omo hot ne case no na abusia judge no asema epie free na no e buy na yese ono no wadi kan ahwe document ne application ni mu nyina awie na sisi a omo nsema omo kan nyina no omo dismiss chairman Wontumi ne case na enka eyese echese na application na enka eyese ye de hot ne case no abusia entisi a chairman Wontumi asem ato no lawyers no e de ensem ababeto dwa nioma esiye ewo court omo yenko na yenko tie ensem a ekoso
accused persons ugina ne nine so be 2 hours na o church court no here e be here say application na e de abedom court say court no ntwentwen so enkosi say ye be court of appeal na court of appeal atie asema ye de akodom court of appeal say submission of no case ye de abedom court obobu ye no na nke wo say court no editum enti nyina so a e wo say court no hwe na nka otwentwen asem no so kosi say court of appeal judges me ensambet na asem no so na wo de won anu December betudwa eno ena na court echeche a lawyer echeche court owie na attorney general enso so ebegina ne nan so ekeka mrao no so gina so say any court no eje asem tum edibe efri enonkro besi sabrede na ye hwese nke bia judge no ebehwe so obepinachi na wakohwe cases aye site ye ne nema nyina na wabetro ne ruling nanso ye wie ye no oso wadi kan ahwe nkrata no nyina matie nsem no nyina enti asem tia ya wa ne se ogitum a enye ye nti wabo agu waka ono tumi a ekura no eno no yeso so wa kwanya se ye be apply ne agi ne ruling no na ya hwese ye be ko eye court of appeal na ehon so yakohwe ne ombe kana the sumbo pa ne say submission of no case na obogu ye no ye wo court of appeal ntino ehun behia says wabo we agua ye be court of appeal ne yakohwe se court of appeal so ebetie asema ye de abedom court we senka ontwentwen so no ana eduri a court of appeal say na see next week say na lawyer kan na immediately after Easter break you know be file application with court of appeal e be repeat stay or proceedings na just the court of appeal nema mienu ene be pende ewo the substantive interlocutory appeal na aya say submission of no case na nka wo se court no gitum no ewo and application for stay or proceedings no so eno so e be court of appeal for determination and an ruling ya wa man dey so no yeji the ruling no na eno so ya hwe say anamon ben e dey betu e dey afa ho na obehwa na lawyer ma afutuo bi say Ghana say no kamia ye say nia ogitum say me gitum say madi money no na ye jai side pa no na am so no akwato ne general for ho say me betimi adi adanse e de atia di pa na mo pese mo prosecute no nti no munyame na attorney general for say ye jawo even though no agi atum so no e na wadi money no enti all related to sa Wontumi case we na o ka say nia charge ye de abono an say ono ne concession ena wama obi kwan senka onkoye reclamation na yesi o ma asa kwan nti wafomemra ye prosecute no ni awaji atum e wo court the police fu aso ye say ono ne koye mining no ono ye jano e na ono no edi adanse e de ama prosecution na o kan se saade no ye hwe ne yie na e koso wo Ghana ya hwe ne yie a ye didi obi a e bia o chena na wo de didi wo enti ye hwe na ye ntu ho anamo na ye hwe se court cases no so a e ko no pepere ye enso so e be ye djuma eno ane se ye nyina ye de ani bedi echi na ya hwe se ne a e ko se be ya Ghana ye democracy a ye se ye de bedi djuma na ye de adi na so abamfa so ama obibia case no ye de call 20th of April na wa ma say e free and nekosi 14th say ye mebue ye defense enti ye wa dance phobia ye nye ho nkrata eno nyina no next week anamo a ibetu no ene be kire ho anamo
we live here on Sunday. Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, I think it's exciting to have the entire board here in the northern region and what already you are going through. Now, let's get into maybe some of you can spend some time on the Bank of Ghana.
Yes.
What the Bank of Ghana has done so far. You took over power, I mean, just about a year, and I think it'll be 3 months now. What has the Bank of Ghana done different? Because already the conversation out is that you inherited a robust mechanism in terms of, I mean, policy framework that would shape up the economy the way it is currently. And for that matter, you've not really done anything significant or introduced any better policies that will give us the turn. I've heard the former finance minister, Amin Anta, our brother here, spoke, I mean, extensively even in Parliament in order for to talk about, I mean, to the effect that you've not done anything novel. You've just inherited strategies that are already laid down for your operations, and that's what is currently putting the economy where it is today.
Well, you know, I respect Honorable Amin Anta a lot. He's my colleague in Parliament. We knew each other whilst we were in Tamale Secondary School. He was 1 year ahead of me. So it was a privilege to see him occupy that office. But I beg to differ. It is very clear that people whose policy was to print money cannot turn around and say that people who have decided not to print money is inheriting a good policy. To the extent that the IMF insisted as part of the program that the Bank of Ghana and Honorable Amin Anta's office, the Ministry of Finance, ought to sign a memorandum of understanding debarring the Bank of Ghana from printing money for the government. That was how serious it was. So they printed and pumped into this economy 80 billion Ghana cedis. And that 80 billion Ghana cedis is what deteriorated the economy. Everybody knows that if you print like a Yahoo boy, you need to work to make money. But if all that you do is to print money, then you are no different from a Yahoo person, right? And that is how they run the economy. Do they want to see that that is a policy that we're proud of, that we will inherit? As a matter of fact, what we have done, one of the biggest jobs we have done as part of monetary policy anchor was to recall that 80 billion cash that was roaming in the economy, that didn't belong in the economy, back to the central bank. As a result of that, we were able to then see the economy for what it is. And as a result, we have been able to stabilize all the macroeconomic fundamentals. As a matter of fact, what we have achieved has never happened in the Fourth Republic. Today, you speak of inflation at 3.3%. These are guys who took inflation to 54%.
They say it's artificial.
What is artificial about inflation?
It is not, I mean, stable. It can't last the moment because
that, you know, I keep telling you, I cannot be following people who are wishing for the downfall of this country. Why would you expect that your economy should deteriorate so that you can make political power? The important thing is that we have gotten to this by dint of hard work. They struggled to even bring inflation to 20%. Ended up with 23%. We have brought it to 3.3%. As a matter of fact, the biggest challenge we have to deal with now is that if we don't steady the ship, we may actually go into disinflation. And that is not what we want, because then that becomes an incentive to businessmen.
Yeah.
So we are very careful to make sure that we don't get to the point where there's a disincentive for businessmen. So there's a vast difference. 3.3% was a dream that any governor since the 1992 Constitution would have only dreamt about. But today is a reality. If you look at the fact that you now have inflation at 3.3%, it means that real interest rates must have a little margin above 3.3%. So you can be moving towards a single-digit interest rate, because you don't need to pay a lot of compensation when you borrow money.
And is that a possibility under?
It is
our
something
current
we are
steps?
working very hard at. Go and check the Ghana reference rate, and I want to give you some background as to how we calculate the Ghana reference rate. The Ghana reference rate is a weighted average comprising 40% of policy rate. So if you are dealing with a very high policy rate, it means that you are adding 40% of that high rate in determining your Ghana reference rate. It is also 40% of your treasury bill rate. So if you were doing treasury bill rate at 33% like they were doing, you are adding a bigger chunk to interest rate. Okay? And then it is 20% of the same treasury bill rate. So if you put this together, you will get what we call the Ghana reference rate. So now you are dealing with a policy rate of 14%. Obviously, 40% of 40% gives you a smaller interest rate. You are dealing with a treasury rate of around 11%. If you take 40% of that, it gives you a smaller rate. And then you are taking another 20% of that. So you see that the variables that determine the Ghana reference rate are all within manageable limits. And as a result, Ghana reference rate must come down. And the Ghana reference rate behaves like what you used to call the base rate. It is a starting point from which the bank must now price for your risk. So if that base, which is dictated by the economy, is smaller, then you have the chance of borrowing at a lower rate. And we did that consciously to be able to provide relief to businessmen and bring down interest rate. This is a clear policy deviation from the MPP that took policy rate to over 25%. That took treasury bill rates to close to 40%. Clearly, you cannot be comparing apples with mangoes. These are a clearly focused group of people who are managing the deliverables that affect this policy. And we are not just moving the numbers, we are making sure that they reflect the fundamentals of the economy.
So if we can say the CD experienced significant depreciation, about 19% in 2024.
Yes.
Before the current stabilization that we're looking at, what structural measures has the central bank put in place? For the long term, because as it stands now, the impression is that the city gets to 10 cities, and then it stands there for a long time. Then by the time you realize, it starts filing up again, and there is no. It seems there's a struggle to get to a single digit exchange rate.
So what we are doing is to manage stability. We are not managing big jumps, whether downward or upwards. We are managing stability. And stability means that the exchange rate will vary within acceptable range so that businessmen can plan. Okay, it is not the same as just starting from 10 cedis, you are roaming at 6 cedis. No. That already is very drastic. And we should know also that the exchange rate, as much as it influences the price and the cost of doing business because we are import-dependent economy, it also has implications for our exports. So when the exchange rate is drastically low, what it means is that our exports become less competitive and more expensive in the international market. So we are mindful of these variables and play the game in such a way that we are able to satisfy various stakeholder interests. Now, structural reforms. Clearly, when you have an economy where they undertook the debt restructuring, and forcefully took 60 billion Ghana cedis from Ghanaians that gave the government money in the DDEP and collapsed the capital market domestically. What it means is that there are no more any opportunities for Ghanaians to invest that money. So if you have 60 billion roaming in that economy, I mean 80 billion they printed roaming in that economy, and there are no avenues to invest that money. Where do you think that money will find itself? It will find itself into the foreign exchange market. So people now have 80 billion to go and buy dollars. What happens to the dollar? The dollar, and that is the reason they took depreciation to 54%. So the first thing we did was make sure that that 80 billion that didn't support economic growth goes back to the barracks, so that people don't have that excess 80 billion printed money to go buy in dollars. And when you are able to manage the demand for dollars, you have a better opportunity to stabilize the currency. That is a clear policy intent. It is not magic. Another group of people say, let's print and pump 80 billion. We don't mind whether they go buying dollars and the dollar depreciates. Another say, look, let's bring those dollars and those cedis back into the economy in order to prevent excess demand of the dollar, so that the people who buy dollars are the people who really need it to bring in imports. That is what we have done. So apart from managing the monetary aggregates to control this, we also took a very important policy measure by government to institute what we call the gold board. What the gold board does is to convert what we call the CD assets, CDs that you have, you convert it into assets that can generate forex for you. So we take CDs, we use the CDs to buy gold from Ghanaians, and then we're able to sell the gold and generate forex. Don't forget that we assumed this office at a time that there was no capacity, or the country had been barred from the international capital market, where they used to borrow $3 billion or more a year to support the city. You didn't have that. So you have to, in fact, you don't even have to think outside the box. You must think without the box.
Because now they also accuse you of always pumping a lot of
CDs. I'm coming to that. So you can see that we were constrained by our inability to generate forex loans to support the city. So we had to find a way to use our natural resources to do that.
Okay, abusuya wene ensema ekoso ewo political highway ne so chairman Wontumi ena chese ene ne court case mote ne lawyer no ensema or the tuja enye easy kra beda mase samoje pene kokoti za ensem no ede mai aha gossip politics TV so medamase.